I counted 14 of them before I stopped counting. 14 pairs of eyes reflecting my flashlight beam between the trees, standing perfectly still in a circle around my tent. That was 3 hours ago. They haven't moved, haven't blinked, haven't made a single sound. And the worst part? I'm starting to recognize some of their faces. But I should start at the beginning. The Cascade Mountain Fire Lookout Tower had been unmanned for 6 years when the Forestry Service offered me the job. 6 months of complete isolation, 73 miles from the nearest town, accessible only by a hiking trail that became impassable once the snow started. Perfect, I'd thought. Exactly what I needed after everything that had happened in Seattle. The panic attacks, the agoraphobia, the complete inability to function around other people. My therapist had suggested gradual exposure therapy. I decided on complete removal instead. The hike-in took 3 days. I'd left my truck at the trailhead with a note on the dashboard, back in 6 months, and started walking. 80 pounds of supplies on my back, a satellite phone for emergencies, and nothing but pine trees and silence ahead of me. I should have noticed something was wrong on the second day. The trail markers were there, those small metal rectangles nailed to trees every quarter mile, but someone had scratched deep gouges across several of them. Not weather damage. These were deliberate, made with something sharp, 4 parallel lines like claw marks. I dismissed it as vandalism, maybe from one of the last hikers to come through before winter. I found the first cairn on the 3rd day, about 10 miles from the tower. Someone had stacked rocks in a neat pile, maybe 4 feet high, right in the middle of the trail. I had to walk around it. There was something wedged between the top stones, a piece of red fabric, faded and weather-beaten, fluttering in the wind. The tower was exactly as promised. 40 feet of steel scaffolding topped with a small cabin, windows on all sides providing a 360 view of endless forest. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything was covered in dust but intact. A narrow bed, a wood stove, a desk with the old fire spotting equipment, shelves of supplies left by the previous lookout. On the desk I found a logbook. The last entry was dated October 17th, 6 years ago. Can't stay anymore. Something wrong with the woods. They watch from the trees. Tell my family I'm sorry. No signature. No explanation. Just that. I told myself the previous lookout had gone crazy from isolation. Cabin fever. It happens. That's why I was only doing 6 months instead of a full year. The first week was perfect. I fell into a routine. Wake at dawn, check the horizon for smoke, maintenance work on the tower, read, sleep. The silence was profound. Healing, even. No car horns, no voices, no obligations. Just me and the wind in the pines. Then on the 8th night, I saw the fire. It was small, maybe 3 miles north. Not a forest fire, too controlled, too contained. A campfire. I watched it through binoculars until it burned out around midnight. Protocol said I should log any human activity, but the satellite phone was for emergencies only. A single camper wasn't worth the call. The fire appeared again the next night. Same location, same controlled burn, and the night after that. On the 4th night, I counted 3 fires, spread out in a rough triangle, each one maybe 2 miles from the others. They all burned until midnight, then extinguished simultaneously, as if on cue. I started feeling watched on the 10th day. It's hard to explain unless you've experienced it. That prickling awareness that you're being observed, the feeling that if you turn around fast enough, you'll catch something ducking out of sight. I found myself checking over my shoulder constantly, scanning the tree line through the tower windows, seeing nothing but forest. On the 11th day, I found the second cairn. This one was at the base of my tower. It definitely hadn't been there before. I'd have noticed a 4-foot pile of rocks right next to the ladder. The same red fabric was woven through the stones. When I got closer, I realized it wasn't fabric at all. It was a shirt, shredded into strips. I kicked the cairn apart. I don't know why. Maybe I was trying to reclaim some sense of control. The rocks scattered across the clearing. I climbed back up to the tower and locked the door behind me. That night, 7 fires burned in the forest. I watched them through binoculars until my eyes ached. I couldn't see anyone around them, just flames in the darkness, arranged in what might have been a pattern. They formed a rough semicircle, each fire equidistant from my tower. The closest was maybe a mile away. At midnight, they all went out at once. In the sudden darkness, I saw something else. A light, smaller than the fires, moving between the trees. A flashlight, maybe, or a lantern. It bobbed and weaved through the forest, getting closer. I killed my own lights and watched from the window. The light stopped at the edge of the clearing, maybe 50 yards from the tower base. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then whoever was holding it pointed it straight up at me. The beam caught me full in the face, blinding me. I stumbled back from the window, heart hammering. When I looked again, the light was gone. I spent that night sitting at the desk with a flare gun in my lap, watching all 4 windows in rotation. Nothing moved in the clearing below. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was down there, just beyond the range of my vision, waiting. At dawn, I found the message. It was carved into the wooden platform at the base of the tower ladder. Fresh cuts, the wood still pale where the bark had been stripped away. 4 words in crude, jagged letters: count the cairns. I searched the clearing, found 6 more rock piles hidden in the undergrowth around the tower's perimeter, each one marked with strips of red fabric, each one roughly the same size and shape. 7 cairns, 7 fires from the night before. I should have used the satellite phone then, called for an early extraction. But something stopped me, pride maybe, or the fear that if I admitted I couldn't handle the isolation, I'd never be able to handle anything again. I told myself it was just someone trying to scare me. Bored hikers playing games with the hermit in the tower. I rebuilt the first cairn I'd kicked apart. I don't know why. It felt important somehow, like apologizing for a transgression I didn't understand. The pattern changed on the 14th day. I woke to find a backpack hanging from the ladder 20 feet up, swaying in the morning breeze. Not mine. This one was ancient, the fabric rotted, the straps barely holding together. It was too high for anyone to have placed it there without me hearing them climb, unless they'd climbed in complete silence while I slept. I used a pole to knock it down. The zipper was broken, but the buckle opened easily. Inside, I found a wallet with a driver's license, Robert Chen, issued 9 years ago. The photo showed a man in his 30s, smiling at the camera. There were other things too. A water-damaged notebook, a broken compass, a park ranger badge. The notebook was barely legible, but I could make out fragments. Day 23, more cairns. Counted 18 now, they're getting closer. Day 31, saw someone in the trees. Called out but they ran. Found their camp, abandoned, everything left behind. Day 40, not alone anymore. They're organizing. I can hear them at night, moving through the forest. The last entry was just 2 words, written so hard the pen had torn through the paper. They're here. I looked at the date on the driver's license again. 9 years ago. 3 years before the last official lookout had abandoned the tower. How many people had come up here? How many had tried to last 6 months and failed? That night I counted 12 fires. They'd moved closer, tightening the circle. The nearest was maybe half a mile away now. I could almost see shapes around them if I strained my eyes, but they were too far for detail. Just silhouettes against the flames, sitting perfectly still. At midnight, the fires went out, and the lights appeared. Dozens of them this time, emerging from the forest like fireflies. Flashlights, lanterns, phone screens, a constellation of lights surrounding the tower. They formed a complete circle, maybe 100 yards out. I counted them frantically. 14 lights, 14 people. They stood there for hours, not moving, not advancing, just watching. I could feel their eyes on me even though I couldn't see their faces. The lights were too bright, washing out everything behind them. At 3 a.m., one of the lights started moving, coming closer. The others stayed where they were, maintaining the circle. This one approached the tower with careful, measured steps. I grabbed the flare gun and pointed it out the window, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. The light stopped at the base of the ladder. I heard the creak of metal as someone started to climb. "Get away from here," I shouted. "I'll call for help. I have a radio." The climbing stopped. A voice drifted up, rough and dry, like it hadn't been used in a long time. "You don't understand. We're trying to help you." "Help me? By terrorizing me? We're trying to warn you." A pause. "The fires keep them away. The cairns mark safe ground. We've been protecting you." "Protecting me from what?" "You'll see them soon. Once you've been here long enough, once you've breathed this air, drunk this water, the forest changes you, makes you see what's really here." "You're insane." Maybe. But we were all like you once. Came up here alone, thought we could handle it. The voice grew quieter. None of us made it 6 months. None of us made it down. The light retreated, returned to its place in the circle. All 14 lights stood vigil until dawn, then vanished with the sunrise. I found more supplies on the platform that morning. Canned food, bottled water, batteries, things I hadn't brought with me, things I'd been starting to run low on. A note was tucked under the supplies, written in shaky handwriting on what looked like birch bark. Don't drink from the stream. Don't eat anything that grows here. Trust us. We were too late. You still have time. I checked my water supply. I'd been refilling from the stream since I arrived. 2 weeks of drinking untreated mountain water, thinking it was pure and clean because it came from such a remote source. What had I been drinking? That day, I watched the forest with new eyes, looking for what I was supposed to see, what they'd all seen. The lookout from 6 years ago, Robert Chen, however many others had come before them. The trees looked normal, ancient pines, dense undergrowth, the occasional boulder or fallen log. But the longer I watched, the more I noticed the patterns, the way certain trees seemed to cluster together in groups of 7, the way the shadows fell wrong sometimes, at angles that didn't match the sun, the way the birds avoided certain sections of forest entirely, leaving pockets of absolute silence. And the shapes, God, the shapes. At first I thought they were just trees, oddly shaped trunks, clusters of branches that created the illusion of form. But they were in different places when I looked away and back, closer each time, always at the edge of vision, never quite clear enough to fully see. By sunset I could make out details, arms that might be branches, heads that might be burls, bodies that pressed against tree trunks, as if trying to merge with them or emerge from them. Dozens of them, scattered through the forest, perfectly camouflaged until you knew how to look. When darkness fell, the 14 fires burned again. Closer now. Close enough that I could see the people sitting around them. They weren't looking at the flames. They were all facing outward, toward the darkness between the fires, maintaining their vigil. I grabbed my flashlight and swept the beam across the clearing. The shapes I'd seen during the day were still there, but now they'd moved into the open. Tall, impossibly thin figures that might have been human once but weren't anymore. They stood just beyond the ring of cairns, swaying slightly, as if moved by a wind I couldn't feel. I counted them with growing horror. 7, 14, 21. The numbers kept climbing as more emerged from the forest. Some were almost human-shaped, others were worse. Elongated limbs, heads that bent at wrong angles, bodies that seemed to flicker and shift when I looked directly at them. They couldn't cross the cairns. I realized that as I watched. They'd approach the rock piles, reach toward them with those 2 long arms, then recoil as if burned. The circle of cairns around the tower was a barrier, and they couldn't breach it. But they wanted to. I could see it in the way they moved, the way they pressed against that invisible boundary, testing it. Hungry, patient. Waiting for a gap, a weakness, a moment when the protection failed. My satellite phone was in my hand before I realized I'd grabbed it. I dialed the emergency number with shaking fingers. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Forestry Service emergency line. I need extraction, now. Something's wrong up here, at the Cascade Lookout Tower. There are... Sir, please stay calm. What is the nature of your emergency? How could I explain? There are things in the forest, and people, survivors, I think. They've been living up here. They say the forest changed them. I need to get out. Now. A pause. Then, sir, are you experiencing hallucinations? Paranoia? These are common symptoms of isolation. I'm not hallucinating. There are at least 30 of those things out there right now. We can have someone reach you in 4 to 5 days. The trail is difficult this time of year. I don't have 4 to 5 days. Another pause. Sir, I'm noting your call, but I need you to understand that weather conditions make immediate extraction impossible. Can you secure yourself in the tower? I looked out the window at the shapes pressing against the cairn barrier, at the 14 fires burning their protective circle, at the people who'd been trying to warn me. They've been keeping them away, I whispered. All this time. The fires, the cairns, they were protecting me. Sir? I hung up. The lights appeared again at midnight, all 14, taking their positions around the tower. one separated from the others, approaching until I could finally see the person holding it. A woman, maybe 40, with hollow eyes and clothes that hung off her emaciated frame. She stopped at the base of the ladder and looked up at me. "We can't hold them much longer," she called. "We're too few now, too weak. They're getting stronger. What do you want from me?" "Help us maintain the fires, repair the cairns, keep the circle intact." She gestured at the shapes swaying beyond the barriers. "If the circle breaks, they'll come for all of us. You most of all. You're fresh, strong, that's what they want. Why don't you just leave? Get down the mountain?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "We tried. They follow. The infection is in us now, in our blood, our bones. We can see them, which means they can see us. The only safe place is here, inside the circles, tending the fires. There has to be another way." "There isn't." Robert tried, made it almost 5 miles before they caught him. We heard him screaming for 3 days. She paused. "You're one of us now, whether you accept it or not. You've been breathing their spores, drinking their water. Give it another week, and you'll see them in daylight as clearly as we do. Another month, and you'll never be able to leave." I wanted to argue, to insist she was wrong, that I could still get out, still go home. But I'd seen the shapes, I'd watched them move, and deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I knew she was right. The taste in my mouth, the way my vision had started to blur at the edges, the sense of connection I'd felt growing with the forest like roots spreading through my consciousness. "How many of you are there?" I asked. 14 now. There were more, but... She trailed off. "Will you help us?" I looked past her at the shapes beyond the cairns. There were more now, crowding thick between the trees. 50 at least, maybe 100, all pressing against the barrier, all waiting. The woman was still waiting for my answer. Behind her, the other 13 lights burned steady in the darkness. 13 people who'd come up here expecting solitude and found horror instead. 13 people who'd been living in the forest for years, maybe decades, maintaining the barriers that kept those things at bay. 14 fires, 14 lights, 14 cairns. They'd been counting themselves all along. I grabbed my flashlight and extra batteries, pulled on my boots. The woman watched me descend the ladder, her expression unreadable. "I'll help," I said. "But we're gonna find a way out of this. All of us." She nodded slowly. "That's what we all said." She led me to the nearest fire. The others were there, 14 faces illuminated by flames, 14 sets of eyes that had seen too much. They made room for me in the circle without a word. That was 3 hours ago. Since then, I've watched the shapes multiply, watched them press closer as the night deepens. The fires are burning low. We'll need more wood soon, but getting it means leaving the circle, venturing into the forest where they wait. The woman, she says her name is Sarah, that she's been here for 4 years, is teaching me how to tend the cairns, how to read the signs when one is failing, how to move between the protective barriers without drawing their attention. "You'll learn," she says. We all did. I count the others around the fires, study their faces in the flickering light. Some I recognize now, from driver's licenses in abandoned backpacks, from photos in rotted wallets. People who came up here over the years, one by one, thinking they could handle the isolation. All of us running from something, all of us finding something worse. The shapes are changing as I watch, growing more defined, more solid. Or maybe it's just my eyes adjusting, learning to see what was always there. They're almost beautiful in their own terrible way, like the forest itself has grown aware, developed a hunger, and shaped itself into forms that can satisfy it. One of them is close enough now that I can see its face, or what might be a face. Features that shift and flow like water, never quite settling into a recognizable pattern. It's watching me with what might be eyes or might be knots in wood or might be something else entirely. I raise my flashlight and point it directly at the shape. The beam passes through it without resistance, illuminating the trees behind. But I can still see it there, superimposed over reality, as real as anything else in this forest. It tilts its head, slowly, curiously, and I realize with cold certainty what Sarah meant. The infection is already in me. I'm seeing what they see, becoming what they became. Another week, and I'll see them constantly. Another month, and leaving will be impossible. Not because they won't let me go, but because the outside world will be intolerable. Too bright, too loud, too empty of the things I've learned to see. The fire pops and sparks, startling me back to the circle. Sarah is watching me with something that might be pity or might be understanding. How long? I ask. How long before I can't go back? She doesn't answer directly. Instead, she says, we take turns sleeping, 2-hour shifts. Someone always has to watch, always has to tend the fires. If we let them go out, she doesn't finish the sentence. I understand. If the fires go out, if the barriers fail, the shapes will come. And whatever they do to people who wander unprepared into their territory, it's worse than spending eternity maintaining these circles of protection. I look up at the tower, my tower where I was supposed to spend 6 months in peaceful solitude, healing from my breakdown. The satellite phone is still up there. In 4 to 5 days, someone will arrive. A ranger, maybe, or a helicopter if the weather clears. But what will they find? 15 fires burning in the forest? 15 people sitting in protective circles, maintaining barriers against things that can't be photographed or recorded or explained? Will I try to leave with them, only to discover that Sarah was right, that the infection is permanent, that I'm bound to this place now? Or will I tell them everything's fine, that I want to stay, that I'm exactly where I need to be? Will I become another warning in a logbook, another abandoned backpack with a driver's license and a half-written journal? The shapes are closer now. I can almost hear them, not sound, exactly, but something that resonates in the space where sound should be. A vibration, a presence, a hunger. Sarah hands me more wood for the fire. You'll take the second watch, she says. I'll show you how to check the cairns. I nod, accepting my new role. What choice do I have? Behind us, deeper in the forest, I hear something that might be laughter or might be wind through pine needles. The shapes sway and shift, patient as the trees they mimic. They've waited this long. They can wait longer. After all, they know something I'm only beginning to understand. We're not guarding the tower anymore. We're feeding it.